Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and we have a deep and meaningful episode for you this week. I think lately the world has been batshit crazy. Most of us can agree on that. And I think now more than ever, there are more people seeking support, seeking guidance, ready to look at what's been holding them back, what's been keeping them where they're at, and reaching out for support. I think more people are in therapy, more people are getting coaching than ever before in the history of the world. And I think that's an amazing and inspiring place to be right now. I know there's a lot of trauma and drama around us, but to know that many people are reaching out and getting support, and that many people are willing to look at who they are and who they've been and who they're becoming, I find that really inspiring. And that's why I'm excited to have the guests that we have on this episode today. So hang tight for 1 second and I will let you know who that is when we get right back. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So Morgan Wilde is a childhood trauma recovery coach. She is also the creator of Rising Warrior Collective, a safe space where other survivors can find support, guidance, and community. Morgan has been committed deeply to her own recovery from long-term developmental trauma for the last 8 years. And the work she has committed to for herself has evolved into a passion for helping others to rebuild their lives after abuse, neglect, and family dysfunction. Welcome to the show, Morgan.
Thank you, Molly. That was beautiful. So beautiful. Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well, it's a really important work. And I think, I don't know, I mean, obviously you have it up in your world all the time because you're talking about it with people, but I've noticed lately a lot of conversations with people I've been having have been sort of rooting back to the way it was when I was a kid, and that it doesn't need to be that way anymore, and what else is possible. So tell us a little bit about how you got into doing this powerful work.
Yeah, so I have been in the coaching realm for about 5 years. And when I started, I was really passionate around our physical health. I was a farmer for a long time and really focused on sustainable agriculture. And I was really focused on what we were putting into our bodies to help us have like a strong foundation. And as I was navigating the coaching realm, I just kept feeling like there was something missing. Like, this isn't it for me. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And at the same time, I was deeply recovering from decades of family trauma and dysfunction. And it just dawned on me as I was navigating this process, like, this is why I feel stuck, because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And what I'm supposed to be doing has been in front of me this whole time. And it was just this like huge light bulb moment of what I'm doing for myself is what I came to this world to do and what I need to be helping other people with. And from that point on, it was just like everything got easier. The coaching business, learning how to do the whole process, figuring out who my people were, it all just started to like sink in. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here finally. And this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah. There's some amazing fulfillment feelings that come with that alignment. Yeah. I was literally just earlier today on my Magnetic Influencer Collective call, which is my 6-month group program, talking about leadership and talking about how more often than not, the work you're doing on yourself is the work that you're meant to guide people through. So I love that you recognize that, and you had so much like confirmation coming from the universe around you.
Well, when you're in the coaching realm and you're not really sure what you should be doing and who you should be working with, it is like coming up against this just like dead end every day. We were like, I just don't know how to pull this together. And more often than not, it's just because we're not quite in alignment with that work that we should be doing. And I think that there's a level of that work that we have to do to ourselves to reach that confidence to say, oh, this is what it is right here.
Totally. Absolutely. And it's very self-effacing or confronting to be in that place of like, I don't know quite who my people are. And then to start recognizing, oh, this work I've been doing on myself is what I want to help people with. And then you really have to own that you've made progress on that path.
Yeah,
And
which is hard in
walking that
itself.
path, yeah, it's hard in and of itself. Totally. I've been there many times, and I know that a lot of people listening to this are going to resonate deeply with that. So let's dig into it a little bit. The stuff we go through in our childhood has a lasting impact on us until we change it, reframe it, reprogram it. How does that system process kind of work in your mind?
I think who I am as a trauma coach is someone who helps connect the dots, because this was my story. I walked out of decades of deep trauma, addiction, dysfunction in my family. And I walked out with this sort of like badge of honor that said, I survived that and I'm totally fine. And that could not have been further from the truth. After 2 decades of my family, I spent the next two sitting in a bar drinking, like with friends. Like that's the culture I grew up in, was alcohol. And I took it from my family pattern and I carried it into my adulthood without even realizing it. Mm-hmm. And I had no awareness around how deeply I was impacted. I mean, when I really started to dive into it and understanding complex PTSD, it was almost like being re-traumatized all over again, because you think that you're okay, you're somewhat adulting, you're living on your own, you're not homeless, like you're functioning on some level, but having no realization that I was really functioning on a very, very low energetic level, and starting to connect those dots and allowing that to all just start to like peeling back the onion layers of, wow, I really have deep wounds that are impacting every single area of my life: money, relationships, work, how I see myself in this world. There's not a single piece that it was not impacting.
Yeah. I mean, even just like seeing you now, if we haven't connected in, I don't know, a few months to a few years, I forget the last time we met up, but you feel like so radiant and so like grounded in your body. And that's just a reflection of the work that you've been doing. It's really powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. But COVID really threw me into the deep end. And like, I thought I had done a lot of healing before COVID, and COVID just like took me through a whole nother realm. And I feel like I'm a different person than I was just 2 years ago.
Yeah. I think that's probably true for a lot of people right now too. Yeah. So you mentioned that low energetic state that you didn't even realize that you were existing in. What are some ways that that shows up for your clients and for people?
A lot of my people that come to me, we all tend to, trauma survivors tend to have a black and white way of thinking, and all or nothing and doom and gloom. So the weight of this world typically feels really heavy to us. Like there's no way out. There's nothing good happening. And I think that shows up in all areas of our life, where we kind of have this attitude or mentality of, it's not worth fighting for. Like we're just sort of in this like gray cloud always surrounding us, and there's nothing to be hopeful about and excited about. And that sort of spills over into every other area of your life, where it's like, well, I'll just take this job because it feels okay, or I'll stay in this partnership because I feel safe enough. It's like we just give ourselves enough to stay in that survival mode, which is what we spent our childhoods in for the most part. So we've continued that on, and we're like, I'll just take what's enough, like enough to make me feel a little bit safe and a little bit okay. And this is okay. And that's all right. And we kind of get stuck in that and lose track of the fact that we could have so much more.
What are some of the like choices we have to make, or the beliefs we have to get into to believe that we can have more? Because that, just knowing that more is possible for us, I feel like it has to be a big leap from that place sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And I think, the foundational pieces that I start with are, we have to go back to the beginning, like learning how to take care of ourselves, learning how to love ourselves, finding that sense of self-worth, because that's what's lacking in so many trauma survivors. Is we weren't told that we were valuable or worthy, or we could do good things in this world, or be the person that we wanted to be. So it's kind of like going back to the drawing board and reparenting ourselves. We're learning from scratch. How do I stop giving all of my energy out there and keep some of it for myself, and start to like build up my foundation? So I think it's a little bit of that, we bring awareness into it, and then we start connecting the dots. And then it's that self-compassion, that deep self-compassion, because so many of us are so hard on ourselves, and the world causes us to feel that way too. Like we're not worth stepping back and slowing down and identifying what's happening within us and building from there. We just have to keep giving and giving and giving. It's like really breaking down those foundational pieces and coming back to ourselves.
Yeah, which takes practice. And like you said, there's like an onion aspect to it where you go through a layer and then there's another layer.
Yeah.
But it's important to keep acknowledging where you are making progress or where you notice different you is showing up in the same scenario.
Yeah. Celebrating the tiny little wins. And, you know, I say this all the time, but trauma recovery is not linear. Like none of this is linear. So a lot of people come to me and it's like, okay, well, how do I get from here to there? Well, it's most likely going to be this, like, climb the mountain, fall back down, climb the mountain, plateau out a little bit, fall back down again. Like it's a roller coaster ride. And I think that really will often get people down and thinking that they're not progressing and moving forward. So I see myself as this cheerleader. Like, you had an amazing week and let's celebrate that. Even if next week falls apart and is a complete disaster, like we're celebrating where we're at right now. And each day is like an opportunity to start over. But it really is, I would be lying if I told anybody that this process was easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so worthwhile. I mean, talk about that, the layers that have changed for you as you've gone through this work. What is life like now?
You know, there's still a lot of work. I'm at this every day, and I think that I will continue to be at this every day, but it gets easier. It's like momentum starts to build up and you collect these new tools and resources. And it's like when something goes wrong, I'm no longer like, the world is ending. I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be homeless. Like there's nothing good that's going to come out of this. Instead, it's like, okay, this is a moment and I have this amazing toolbox that I can lean into. What resource do I have right now? I have therapy, I have coaching, I have my women's circles, I have my places to fall back to know that I'm not alone in the process. And that alone helps me just feel like I can tackle the world and like I can take it on in bite-sized pieces. And today, I mean, my life looks drastically different than it did 5 years ago. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm building this beautiful business. I built a tiny house this last summer. So I'm kind of like transitioning from full-time nomad life to more of a part-time, like on the road when I want to be, but having a grounded foundation, which is amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And I know people out there listening are probably inspired by that possibility. I also want to say what you just said, which is the roller coaster of it, that there are highs and then lows. The lows are different as you move forward.
Yeah.
This kind of work, as you progress through it, it doesn't mean there aren't lows in life, but when you hit those lows as the new self, as the next you, you're more resourced, you have tools. It's not the same as a low that was happening 5 years ago.
100%.
And that is evidence that the work is being done, that the change is occurring, that the transformation is happening.
Like a rabbit hole for me 5 years ago could have taken me down for a month. Whereas today I see myself flowing through it so much quicker and easier. And it's not hitting my system the way that it used to. So I don't get sick from things anymore. I don't fall into a deep depression from things. It's like I have these resources to navigate through. I compare it to like learning how to surf. Like we're learning how to stay on the surfboard no matter what wave comes to us. We're learning to be up there and just kind of flow with it. It might be scary and hard, but we have that faith and trust in ourselves that we've done the work and we know how to navigate through it.
Yeah, so powerful, and so powerful to acknowledge, because I know a tendency to say, this is just who I am. This is how I was raised. This is how I am now. And that's like a declaration that is just so limiting. Yeah. And that is so like, it's almost like saying I'm willing to stay in this box forever because this is who I am. And this is how I react and how I behave. And to be willing to let that thought go, no matter how many times you've thought it or said it, and say, you know, what if my being this way is simply a product of how I was taught to be? What would I like to choose instead? How would I like to be in this moment? How would I like to interact with people in my life or with my partner or with my profession? And would that feel better? Would that feel more light? If I was willing to give up who I think I am, who could I be then? Yeah. So it's kind of, it can be scary to say, I thought I knew who I was. Am I willing to look at that? That's scary in and of itself. But the beauty of this is to look at, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing broken about you. And everyone has work to do. And when you start to become someone who's willing to look at that stuff, so much is on the other side of it. So much possibility, so much like thriving and self-expression, and just a totally different existence.
Yeah, there's so much possibility and potential. I see that in so many people. And I also, it's such a strange trauma, such a strange thing, because as much as it hurts and it's painful, it's comfortable for many of us to stay in that stuck place, because many times all the people around us, for me, everyone around me, my family, I was the only person to say there's something wrong with this. And that is such a scary place to be at first, of like, well, if I step away from this comfortable, uncomfortable place, where does that leave me? Who does that leave me with? And for me, I walked away from everybody. I've been no contact with my family for going on 3 years. My best friend of 15 years, I walked away from everything. And that's a really hard thing to do as a trauma survivor, to say, like, I feel like there's something wrong and things could be different, but then to take that leap and do it, and all the things that kind of come along with that, it takes a really brave soul to decide, I want things to be different.
Yeah. It really does. And that's such a huge, we're not saying everyone needs to leave their family or break up with their best friend, but that taking that stand for yourself, if you are doing the work and you are trying to share that with people who just simply can't hold that space with you, it may not be forever, but removing that aspect from your life so you can get what you need to do. So that you can transform. I just made a huge choice like that this past year, of leaving a partner that was pretty great, but just not quite right. And in hindsight, a lot less healthy for me than I realized in the moment. And now I'm visiting my dad this week and just recognizing how much of the stuff that was going on in my partnership was stuff that I experienced with my father. It's like we carry forward those lessons until we're willing to learn them. And once we learn how to take a stand against them, or advocate for ourselves, or heal that part of ourselves, or reparent that part of ourselves when necessary, it completely changes your capacity to be with that type of person or that energy again in your life.
My God, yes.
Yeah, it's powerful. And and we don't recognize until we start doing it, how many different places that it impacts in our worlds.
Yeah. And the fact that you were able to, from my experiences and the women around me, we all want partnerships so badly. We want that love and that connection. And up to this point, we would have done anything for that and stayed in just okay relationships, knowing that there's red flags there. So the fact that you were able to see somebody for the good, but know that it wasn't the right relationship for you and still walk away, that says so much about what you've probably done to be able to get there and do that.
Totally. And I think me 5 years ago wouldn't have had the courage to walk away from something that was, as good as it kind of was. And kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, like that is what the work looks like. It's progressive. Like 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do that. And throughout the process, it would have looked like wobbly. But then all of a sudden you're here one day and you're like, this isn't the right relationship. And I have the power and the strength to say that and admit that to both me and that person. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, holy crap, that's growth. Like I am here. I just had an experience that showed me that I'm here. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And it's a progressive journey too. The little steps that you take build on each other, and you build that strength, you build that capacity for it. And it can be looping. You wonder why you're in a relationship with kind of the same person over and over. It's because that part of it hasn't been healed or figured out for you yet. And so you're attracting the same lesson so you can have a new experience with it. I'm such a nerd with that. I geek out on that so hardcore these days, because I'm like, I see my patterns so clearly now. And when I see it show up a couple of times, I'm like, God, I haven't healed that yet. Like, damn it, I still have to work on this piece. I swear I fixed this. And it's like,
the universe is just going to keep showing it to us over and over again. Like, okay, here's another opportunity. Let's see what you're going to do with it this time.
Right. What are you going to choose? Here it is again. What are you going to choose? Do you want to choose the same thing? And that was the other part I wanted to speak to again also, was the complacency, or like the comfort that we have in the suffering, that it is so normal to have something wrong in this reality, to have something that's, you know, worth complaining about, or that's uncomfortable, or that's like just not quite right. Yeah. And that's the norm. Mm-hmm. So to imagine moving through that to get to a place where you're just thriving, where you feel happy more often, where you're like, you know, whether it's success or whether it's a fulfillment in your career, however you want to name that, that's more scary to most people than just staying where they're at.
Absolutely. And especially as a trauma survivor, like we grew up waiting for the other shoe to drop. We waited for like the alcoholic parent to show up, or the dysfunction to be in the room. So we were constantly preparing for it. So that's a very common theme between me and clients, is when settle comes and ease and joy, it's a really uncomfortable thing. So I have to remind them that it's a practice to get comfortable in joy. Yeah. And it's like a mind-boggling concept. We should just be able to be happy, right? But it's actually really hard for some of us.
Yeah. That I'm allowed to feel happy, that there isn't another shoe that's going to drop.
Yeah. And then just thinking about, like, I have a few clients who, and I'm similar to this, is that the world feels very heavy and very hard. And I have a very strong focus on the negative. So to find happy and joy in my life and financial stability, knowing how many people don't have that, there's this like guilt that we live with of like, well, why do I deserve this? Because there's that original wound again, right? Like, I don't deserve to have this. So there's so many pieces in there to navigate through that. I don't think a lot of people understand that we often can't just go from these dark spaces that we're in to like pure unadulterated happiness. Like, there's this journey that we take on it to slowly reacclimate to something, or acclimate to something like that.
Yeah, totally. That brings in the programming, the neural programming, and what your system is used to and what it has the capacity to experience. And then just our like baseline for receiving has to expand in some way. And that can take practice to, like, you know, have somebody just acknowledge the hell out of you and not negate it, or have somebody pay you a large amount and not feel shame and guilt and grief about it. Yeah. It's a muscle system, a mental muscle system that you have to build, and that takes time. And I just want to say the power of doing that with support and not relying fully on yourself to try and figure it out. There are so many blind spots and so many patterns we can't quite see for ourselves yet, that it's so important to have support with someone like you to see those blind spots for us, or to help point out, like, hey, you mentioned that a few weeks ago, that seems like it might be a pattern we could look at. That reflection, that witnessing, that accountability is such a powerful thing to lean into, which is why I think we're seeing more people than ever leaning into support.
It's amazing. I mean, I DIY'd myself through this the first 5 years. I didn't step into therapy until I was in my late 30s, and coaching and all this. And I'm like, had I had this the whole way through, I probably could have cut my time at least in half from all of the struggle I was in. I mean, it's night and day having a support system. And there's so many ways, like, even if you can't afford coaching or therapy, like seeking, you know, the people in your life that are where you want to be or where you're going, instead of looking for advice from people who are still maybe sitting in the bar or going out drinking every night. Like, shoot to the people who are doing what you want to do and find support in that. I have a group of 2 other girls right now that we're all 3 navigating the dating world. And we have fully committed to, you are each allowed to point out my blind sides. Like, do not let me go down these paths again. And one of them had a date over the weekend, and we both saw like these patterns showing up for her. And the fact that she opened that door to let us like come in and say those things, she quickly nipped it and like cut the date off and is moving forward. And she's like, I never would have done that. I would have gone down this path probably for at least a few months.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Amazing. Having support is one of the cheat codes to life.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So you have your website is Rising Warrior Collective, and you have a community of people that tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what I'm working on building here right now, I primarily just do one-on-one coaching, but I eventually want to start creating small group programs where I have, say, 5 to 10 women, because what I see is women come to me, but they don't have a strong support system outside of me. So I want to start creating a collective where we're building people who are healing from trauma, and they have the tools and resources. And it can kind of be similar to like a 12-step program where it's like phone a friend, like go down your list of resources and like reach out to that community that you're now building. Like not everyone can go home and talk to their partner or the family the same way that they're talking and learning with me, and being able to expand that to other people. So the collective is, I think, part of what I'm hoping to build with this is continuing to bring more community into it.
Yeah, just like you said, to have more people on your team who can help you guess and check as you're moving through life in all different areas.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I think we all, like everyone in the world, could use a good accountability buddy in their team. Like not someone who's going to co-sign your bullshit, but someone who's going to be like, no, I see what you're doing and I'm going to hold you accountable for like where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that. I appreciate having people like that in my life as well. Yeah. It's important. And I've created so much more in my business and in my life because of having that support system.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what are the best ways for people to get a hold of you or follow you or find you?
I'm on Instagram at Rising Warrior Collective, and same with TikTok. And email me, Morgan at risingwarriorcollective.com, website, same name. Yeah.
risingwarriorcollective.com. Awesome. So we'll put that in the show notes so that people have easy access to it. Definitely go click open Instagram real quick, follow Rising Warrior Collective, and see what Morgan is up to. And I always like to end the show with this question. Are there any last words of wisdom you want to leave people with?
I really like to tell everybody, like, if there's any, like, if you heard this conversation, there's just like a little tiny nudge inside of you that I may have experienced childhood trauma. It doesn't look the same for everybody, and sometimes it can be really hard to identify. But if there's just something inside of you questioning that, I urge you to like follow that, look for support, ask questions, dive into Google under trauma research, like whatever you can do to start bringing that into awareness and connecting the dots, and just allow yourself to be aware and curious and non-judgmental.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Morgan, for sharing your magic, for doing your deep work, and for showing up in the world so people can find you and receive more support and guidance and mentorship. I love what you're up to. I think it's really valuable.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Yeah. And thank you everyone out there for listening, for being a podcast listener. Don't forget, whatever happens, to keep asking big questions and taking bold action, because you are here for a reason. Bye.